Uh, probably given so I would say that probably they will probably have to be their kids and they have to be their children and so I believe it's like, I think, and whatever. Yeah, that's their offer. I'm actually sorry.
CCD. Yeah. In the Socialist Revolution, how do I know the base station? It's like no one cares to go. You know, you won't trust each other. And they also wants to share too. Oh, it strains the practice. I should have. Because they would infiltrate that. They would get it.
All of they don't keep your gun. I don't know. They might do. All right, let's see. Yeah, okay. They kind of are, but they're not all the different. Let's see. You do? They read like this kind of wacky, they'll have this kind of wacky, like simple planning through technology goals. So they would want to pull answers to just like Senate General, simple planning fails, all records the same technological planning fail. Yeah, do you not have them in a regular draft day, 5 we should do. Yeah, don't sweat it. I'm gonna send you a 2 and C that this isn't the 2 I used to be, but it's a different Westminster debater.
Same box.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. You wanna?
Yeah.
You want to? Yeah. I was just writing the.
What email do you want? Okay, sure.
Okay.
Holy secret.
Yes.
I don't think they're out there, so I'm not worried about that. They do like, but it involves.
For the choice. Oh. No, at all. No instructions is.
They, let's just. By the way, which the organization of American States, they request an accelerated advisory opinion from the Interaction Commission on Human Rights. It is a problem. It is. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it feels so good to have one back. Oh man, what's happening?
Gotta choose, put it up PR and stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't, yeah.
Thinking words, we always like. The greater knows. There's one that's still. Making this separation of power top to mean very big about separation of power instead of what I do. I mean, these are what the days of like a tall topic.
No. I mean, I think the one side you were kind of saying. You gotta be like, how
Yeah.
question.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I know, it says like. That's not the same thing that I put it in on. But that. It does. I don't know. I can. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This next one. But now. Or it's in Southeast Asian.
An impact for the Southeast Asian, for defense or offense.
Oh, we haven't shown. Southeast Asian. Yeah. Oh,
Well, none of those countries have nukes, so. Right, I'm gonna send you a reason they're all purposes that I can. It's like, there's no reason to assume that post-capitalist transformation could not abolish all of these institutions while leaving others. By these institutions that need markets.
Stop the healthy and one of them wants that radio behind. Or shut. Stop last day. No. Tired of. I thought that's the best healthy too. And I read the handle covered. Why is it there in a row? No, this is not a low. This is a low no. Definition of ceremonies. It is not sleepwear. It's not loungewear. And therefore is allowed to consume.
What's up? Control planning. Yeah, I can get it. I'm gonna save the. Yeah. We do not, we sure don't like you.
I put on the team. I like it. I like it in dealings where you have like lots of people that bring stuff for like.
No, I'm talking about the fact that you don't put.
Oh.
Where your funds. Features can be around.
I just put. One for like. I also put some post op because I think that's the other thing. This is my head. And like. Hello. I was being answered.
Just all around. So. It's like, you just free control one.
Did you ever have?
That's never thought here. Why? Yeah, I can tell you about it. Yes.
Yeah. I mean. No, I don't.
We go party.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's his part. I think that could be part of the book.
I don't know if there's actually with like yeah. I think the car is gonna be. No, it's not.
Oh, hell no.
It's not.
Who's two, I think. Dude, Bomer's actually got a two. Bomer's got a twin blood. They're so.
If you need to, they would be out. Walking.
Hello?
Okay. Not anymore.
This is like, it's good. They're flashes. It's like patent's bad because they're bad for psychedelic innovations, like that's like.
Well, it's good to see it, right?
Sure.
Maybe it doesn't matter.
Well, that's gonna my second choice.
You should probably read it, but. I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I don't need allowance, so I don't know.
What?
Just the nerd with glasses. The biker made a big mistake thinking he was weak. What happened next? Shock. I'll show you.
I'm watching your app.
That's the life, that's the life.
I'm delighted to be here.
I never see these models speaking out.
It's coming. You make me happy. Yeah. Is there an extension cord under the desk?
I do not believe so.
You could say you're right.
Oh, what a great song.
For $159.
I think.
We got. Like that. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jerry. Hi.
Hey, Jerry, Ken. This is Josh, Mike.
Hi. What do you call them by their full names? Okay. Yeah. I have it. I'm downloading it. This is up, I'm sorry. Yeah. We're good. Great, cool. You say yes?
First one's been one of the law fee standards for federal trademarks mandates compliance with federal law as registration requirement blocking cannabis trademarks due to their illegality. Title 21 federal convictions on federal cannabis trademarks and these also not some federal trademark cannabis deemed illegal by the federal government cannabis related goods and services or part of the federal registration of cannabis trademark and market procedures commerce and commerce to global and individual states of the U.S. cannabis is not enough since there's something on the federal law based on the statute of administration of the commerce activity schedule for one of these things so knowledge that state activities and commerce when these marbles registration is now allowed because the number one piece of right there by commerce really based U.S. beat the world innovation of innovation and a lack of cross-border changes cycles export Charlie. That's 20 words give us the best body part of the work of the United first. We're positioned to the states of the US, the first job innovation regulations for abilities, more states government simplification underlying recipient better quality innovation, the one one's tech on the term industry for customers by oversight insurance party saving and adult trade trademarks of key commercialization and products reliable to the medical governments. That's 22 research and just giving trademark like trademark application products and adjustable for production because that's some of the such goes about all the game production industry, great trademark for great shops and not protect they will not try others to use some of our companies with the ready first position we had good rate no trust in decisions because eligibility were but the company sells provide with CSA MDCA CIT not all the test for CCD remaining eligible to FTCA there were responsible for CBD so the company should work to job business and marketplace should allow businesses to realize internet representation and with our and high temperature and more customer recognition the future signal of 3000 shipping application and mature shipper represent the average filing and national application to a single platform within priority companies that remembers the rights of our never under companies to do branding the create scripture be the sales to share the types of money issues to another city when they went to the decided to sort of in cannabis so what can become real manufacturers on federal chambers for saving people future branches of litigation section for right clause to other questions brand of connection regarding high levels of investment industries to a number of the activities we can share children by the rights of assumption and misuse that is not as for exploit restrictions that there's no price lot of trade profits also needs us to do as one part of the grand assumption use of by fixing the logo to achieve certain register cannabis innovation allows us to survive nuclear war green 21 cannabis ability to remove radioactive waste we have no survive new border winter and we're one of these other effective all cannabis chemicals and particles automatic product remediation is one of the best it also called AMR region the 24 research is the potential cannabis offer revolution APR and cannabis side is microbial effects of bacteria resistant antibiotics and movement watches for properties distributing CBD that's best solid efficiency THC and blood function proliferation and production AMR creates engineered pathogens extension Johnson 22 CCR 26 over the next century services constitute TCBR no exposure to account for the resistant most bad engineered pathogens discuss the direction of bioweapons development of future pathogens that causes environmental overshoot extinction for girl that's 21 resistant by bacteria and related to one of the microbiology disease and disorders and the release of micro like that was certainly good was like oxygen nitrogen sulfur reduction index mitochondrial digestion use and long-term risk of the health of the earth federal chamber policy police of the black market paper in 2029 production of chambers only first time with service granting chamber registration will allow legitimate markets police of the black market chambers should not sufficient parts and travel industry labels to the overseas only federal chamber while policing and protecting legal Mississippi should be able to police the market for protecting chambers support 7 and protect then you run a true economic legalization, implementing trade organization, will the cannabis black market fuels, Chinese organized crime and law. This one for Chinese government and dominate list and undermining financial legislation bill. What differences of black market bill, global black market value 44 billion a year. The 8% of the cannabis shippers are rising. Chinese global power security officials. Let's say China's government reputation called the crop. There's one for Asian government green guards, China over. But China programs accountability. Corruption we can target our doctors really. The China police contractors gambling fraud laundering. Chinese Chinese I can't make a China nuclear war 10-18 changes for as for external war against China and US and Korea possess nuclear Japan for social good developing combination Pacific. Also escalate the nuclear share operation allows this drives up to the low cartel by throwing US Mexico bilateral efforts show. But some key crypto several works ago. Unless the copying new crime organization great protection Canada's actually reducing crime corporation less several corruption for cartel change and property marginal profitability share operation Canada's represent more with the bilateral efforts and reduce crime along sentinel. Otherwise they undermine US local commits works. Global arms is how attend the Icelandic Mexico cartel revenue card maritime. Actually the insurance the American world the rest of the world NDCA border custody and military as well allies and adversaries trust and disruptive oranges illicit we smuggling process where it's actually 17 new companies from US City the marijuana experts prefer method for delivering nuclear devices about marijuana to go to radiation reports have a record liver shipment device now for detection Harvard suggested it would be easy to plan for competition unless cross-border exchange at Nigeria next one for federal chamber relation rates instead of disintent rate single rates for legal remedies and access to money that will apply to appreciate products such as competition that reputation rates are higher but when it's just trade regulation economic cannabis raising cannabis trade regulation is expensive whether this is person rates let's say the company is political chambers east access other states and which people companies reach more and achieve greater cannabis is therefore the United States regulation should significantly strengthen this protection of domestic chambers by removing the law use requirement if any issues over it. PTO enforcement of the law use requirement undermines efforts to other agencies enforcement regimes and creates a factor of private cause of action for laws unrelated to trade because this will keep law use under conventions of federal laws PTO nation. The violation of natural laws is to destroy the equity discretion and it's about the process PTO ability to government and the PTO insists on putting with others that provide more resources of others. The PTO interests to carefully go over shit enforcement regimes and law enforcement. Turkey marijuana is believe that safe representative best position regulated. And by refusing restrictions to marijuana PTO undermine the premise of junior policy and law use requirement created as factor of private cause of action not included. Then private person PTO effectively given a private partisan of federal laws. In fact, though, the cause of action creates a backward enforcement of the statute and adversely making the NDCA rate the 17 application of law use and line of of backward for other statute. No, private cause of action NDCA rate no, private cause of action goes restricted not all be used and they cannot be based on registered chamber in numerous cases unlawful use space. The FTC without mentioning any problem is not clear that guarantees drug shortages commercially for drug shortages becoming more common US experience more shortages in hospitals are generally to locate legitimate drugs increasing violent competition shortages are complicated manufacturing disruptions body issues ingredients platforms and something that increases flexibly by using production cancer drugs like human shortages accessibility pharmacies increases efficiency combating global sliding combating global conflict global shortages GLP-1 integrity aggressive type 2 diabetes obesity extreme level health systems are probably marching over even during a shortage of toxic combating pharmacies and litigation between lawsuits pharmacies blood chamber violation plus advertising and none of the climate credit for done these kinds of businesses toxic private never cause vaccine adverse disability the patient access to medicines causes disease response worse the 24 closes supposed to resilience and pressure response sexual trauma where chronic drug shortage represents an accidental healthcare facility civilians in our entire health system vulnerability supply chain are not even represented going public health care the shortage of many children cause medication and pain medication never patient experience our shortage for geopolitical reasons people want to listen we have now having medicines and the health system are being more pronounced when this is already trained cause then COVID reveals the supply chain for drug shortage for generic medicines pandemics cause exchange of bomb the 20 interactions with Ralph Walsh in history for what's global travel urban density creates more opportunities matching earlier pathogen may have only killed the small portion of the population deep historical evidence with hypermobility no communities and pandemics the other civil the two classes of the rate will cause corruption and food security it resulted in insufficient cardiovascular failure human temperature rapidly rise resulting in the double catastrophe common harms of the initial catastrophe contagious cancer causes extinction of John next one nutritional represented that evolutionary phenomena several cancers have evolved in numerous occasionally species and stages of all these and then plants innovation generating more electric conscious and recapitulate to the progression of metastatic cascade the plants all goes nearest the balls will be used to eliminate structure and because when you always in a place of human like many radical form of living properties cause limitation of PTO group discovered the complicated structure of the lab to structure is already possible to work around the requirements of launching and PTO good voluntary launch requirement agency presenting to reveal it in rule 2.6 times this year respects to class no requirement agency may be good and no way refused restriction because under violation statute negating the harms and steps of requirement PTO were refused to work somewhere with all the law card concerned degree of enforcing a law of PTO it's not possible to use course and value the requirement at the next opportunity. Commercial drug shortages for mental health crisis that causes leak headed. The S23 check toxic documents for leak social awkward and low self-esteem and the significant increase in community wise of top security clearance loneliness and self-esteem given by for mental health issues identified 1825 disease where President Trump's security clearance has not been as well as issued made cross-border children's dysfunctional behavior goes nuclear page 8 military secret 8 disclosure of contagions. I'm sorry.
One second.
Good.
I'm down. Who does the plan?
Normal means is the USPTO.
Sure, that's fine. What is lawful use?
Lawful use is the requirement for trademarks that in order to register, they have to be used lawfully, i.e. not violate any federal statute.
Okay, sure, so. The DL card says that like federal protection is not available for cannabis right now. So is it available in like the states where cannabis are used?
No, so trademarks are registered federally with USPTO, so when someone goes to register a trademark, even though it's legal at the state level at places like California, Colorado, Michigan. Those are not trademarkable because it's still illegal to register trademarks that if they're federally.
You cannot get federal trademarks in this code, but certain states allow for state trademarks of marijuana.
Okay, sure. This Chinese organized crime scenario, why has this not spilled over? Why hasn't this impact happened given how long marijuana has not been?
Yeah, and funny.
Okay, so actually, the Chinese organized crime has only started selling and using marijuana as a main profit source. Because in recent years, China has started cracking down on their other revenue sources in Southeast Asia, things like gambling, prostitution, and other sources. So now they've shifted to the US, where they're now growing marijuana in places like Oklahoma through Chinese nationals. And then that's a main revenue source for them.
Okay, sure,
It's like
so,
crazy.
okay. Sure, so Chinese organized crime, why is this the biggest interlink to Asian conflict? Like, why
Yeah,
is it
so
Trump
it's a
is
unique
doing
internal link that destabilizes the CPP when they're not in control of their own government effectively, because these groups have more control than their own people that they're, pointing to run certain areas of the government.
So
It
like,
causes the public to lose trust, it causes the CPP to lose legitimacy, it causes greater instability in the region and causes flashbacks.
okay, sure, but like, why doesn't China invading Taiwan, etc., or making threats to Taiwan?
And making threats to Taiwan isn't necessarily an instability, even though that might be a vector for how that instability could escalate, it's not necessarily causing a destabilized regime.
Okay, so Chinese organized crime has existed for like a really, really long time, and there were times in like the 80s and 90s when they were almost bigger than the government. Why is it so unique now?
I mean, I disagree with most everything in that question. Kind of explained earlier that the revenue has increased substantially in the past few years because of transnationals in Oklahoma, for example, growing marijuana in the US. So yeah, their funding is usually high now and they're growing.
So that's fine. Why do pandemics cause extinction, or actually contagious cancers? How do these cause extinction?
Yeah, so the evidence is actually surprisingly good that says that pandemics or certain diseases like cancer can mutate and metastasize in humans, which means that they can.
That's
spread
fine. It
and
says like,
transmit.
it's very rare in nature.
Yeah, it might be rare, but increasing.
And then
utilization is more
parasites?
likely.
I'm sending it now, it's 5, and then I forgot the name. 1, 2. It's sent. Yeah, the order is 5. Marijuana overreach.
Where is this?
Also,
Yep.
what are you good? I agree.
The first office of China gained one is his articulation of the China that is predicated on distortion to Chinese foreign policy secure, US hegemony and demonize the Chinese other sovereign critique. The China that is not used the term primarily cultural and social the Chinese people projecting the 11 aliens threatening the United States, argue that China poses a real threat going China more likely to make peace meetings instead of the China the rebel allegation of it, but reincarnation of the yellow bear the main purpose of threatening Chinese identity trigger by your opposition China's fashion is the absolute other. Anti-China rhetoric makes it impossible to know the truth about China regardless of the yes truth claims rhetoric harms Asian people in real life 220. We have been inundated with the accusation and action launched against China. Chinese Americans were removed from prominent Chinese Americans students. All these in the name of national security constructed later by one another. The media about China makes it difficult and impossible to discover the falsehood. The China, the USA, the aggression, the mainland Chinese state, the PR, extend every day aggressions. All who present is Asian Americans. Thus, vote negative to resist Orientalist duality through Nihon run only through constant resistance and critique which truly break Orientalist dualities. The ballot represents engagement and recognition, perpetuating anti-Asian violence. Show in 23. Through the several feminist and Japanese media shaped the narrative creators several of the Orientalist Union on Japan as part of the modernized world through tech development to destroy their own narrative, recreate the duality of Orientalism, cultural tradition, and technically Japan is an opportunity for the critical reappropriation of technical Orientalist truth that would sustain an illusion simultaneously engage with the accepted images while contesting dehumanizing to ignore Asian self-representation would deny Asian the consequences or the misrepresentation with cultural and informational change against the necessity for the critique of technical Orientalism, the perpetuation of Asian change and shape the societal perception of the construction and preservation of technical Orientalism only through critical observation and analysis we have to challenge and expend these problematic misrepresentations. Next up is the counterclaim. The United States federal government should legalize marijuana and form an independent federal price committee tasked with monitoring market behavior, demand for disease control, and cannabis innovation. Comprised of experts based on their observations, the federal price committee should award a sufficient price for disease control and cannabis innovation, including but not limited to cash payments and governmental benefits. Counterclaim solves the case that sets the sufficient incentive to innovate and promote with ID. A prize government gets an award to entities producing inventions socially valuable based on the best contributions designated reference to a particular carbon gas covers the benefits cover a wide range of invention to work to target a particular invention with pharmaceuticals on the government of several market behavior and estimate the demand and improve social welfare produced by the relations involved in raise tax revenue to accomplish. Next up is the CRR counterclaim. The United States federal government not performing binding catastrophic risk review of curveballs in the area of trademark implementing a significant strengthening of protection of domestic intellectual property rights and trademark by abolishing the law of use requirement even only a failure to adopt such policy to determine increased catastrophic risk instead of directly strengthening IP protection. The counterclaim endorses the plan continually on an evaluation of its impacts and catastrophic risk using the process in area current policy inaction as the precedent for maintaining catastrophic risk evaluation agency agenda setting the report 22. There's little forward role for CBOA and agenda setting catastrophic risk waited after, but there is a reason to be concerned in action and catastrophic risk legal political dimensions begin attention likely OIRA reviews that agenda establishes number of catastrophic risk rules adopted through the process provided proof of concept OIRA can practice passion cost benefit the after initial heightened activity incorporated in the long-term process identifying catastrophic risk. There is substantial backlog once it is taking place. Catastrophic risk research is in a more regularized process. Such a process be a major innovation would move each from the periphery towards the central places setting the agenda for the U.S. policy. Spills over to optimal management of solar risk extinction level 22. Nukes confirm the human capacity to become more destroy safe development company continue to face catastrophic risk can be officially managed to failure to act rather contribute to catastrophic risk agency inaction could already contribute to catastrophic risk climate change AI outbreak pandemic WND exacerbated by the failure takes its availability cost benefit justify core benefit analysis and important input during the process of regulatory design places more limited role agenda setting catastrophic risk review spearheaded by OIRA would address catastrophic with dynamic gas and already said. New off case. Topical plans must be the course protection of IPR tells judicial person is sued by violation and not by what is limited to the topic of congressional action is entirely new regime sues about correct. This is like law and Congress capitals or congressional field. Sorry, you'll sum that. Next up is the captain. Trademarks are the embodiment of capital's need for market dominance denoting a lifestyle of compensatory debt. Trademarks are merely an embodiment of capitalism, the end of globalization, everything from brand to culture, the human values meant to be moved for denoting a positive, denoting the lifestyle of the decent customer believing he or she can live inside the respective brand. Trademarks are a tool for market dominance, leading the brand dominate the market to taking radical steps to increase the register for market. Capitalism fuels the extinction triangle, a positive view by that guarantees ecological collapse after war pandemics, Duber, and Julio 23. Capitalism are using performance militarism drives environment destruction. Capitalism is doing the military condition and compromising democracy, matrix, centralized environment, and destruction, climate change, pandemic, biodiversity, loss of militarism, nuclear, biological, chemical, cyber war, risk, varieties, existential risk, global capitalist system, biodiversity, cloud, cyber war, biological war, focusing instead of nuclear war, climate change, pandemic, capitalism, creates the extinction, fuels the environmental threats, climate change, multiply the extinction of the capitalism because wars further multiplies the extent of nuclear war. Capitalism is the leading cause of accelerated all these steps. The alternative is socialist, democratic, decentralized planning through cybernetic feedback technology and Source 23. Marxism and taking development will not sufficient structural solve cybernetic feedback technology facilitate democratic decentralized planning terms socialism, social laws for the needs of consumer need to be competitive to the marketplace worker receive board cybernetic mandatory and analyze macro self-managed by all workers guardianship for the means protection status seeking profit workers motivated by socialism abolishes capitalist institutions governments and privatized modes of protection. Next up, actually go to case. First is that they can't solve weed innovation, still legal post plan which makes entertaining commerce impossible. Second is the status quo solves marijuana research is always booming the whole time. Legal premise emerging clinical research, open research, data is voting job market must become the largest consumer segments, organizations of the Institute of Cannabis Research and International Cannabinoid Research Society, Medical Cannabis Science. They say other plants can't solve nuclear radiation, marijuana innovation doesn't keep on 23. 12 of the best buzzwords are radiation, cactus, snake plants, aloe vera, beetle leaf plants, spider plant, acacia palm, rubber plant, sunflower, spindle leaf fig, asparagus fern, English ivy, mustard greens. That is a stupid list. No AMR impacting breakthroughs in research on resistant chemical treatments like bacteria, vulnerable to antibiotics, talking 22. A new approach to fighting ABR can help prevent any disease by bringing about bacteria, vulnerable to treatment research to find a way to repair ABR by inhibiting a protein that drives resistant capabilities. A completely new way of targeting resistant research using proposals to prevent the formation of resistant proteins. The team is finding work in developing inhibitor, achieving safe protective effects, using DSPA inhibitors offer a way to treat resistant infection. No organized crime competency, no reason the black market is created. Plans all that organized crime will just trade differently makes it easier for them, and Chinese organized crime is in free fall now. That's global time 23. The number of violent crimes was the lowest in China, was the lowest crime and sense of security percentage of prosecuted for violent crimes, 3.9 dropping 35%, 1999, that was replaced by dangerous diving. No weak smuggling the card is GOP conspiracy theories, spitballing about a litany of theories. They say leaks, no leak is possible to fully solve for all mental health crises, even with the maintenance of drug development. Leaks are normal means are frequent, and the government doesn't care about the norms. 23. Though Biden said he was not concerned about intelligence leak, the document done was supposed to critically use intelligence the most significant public and understand the president could not begin further leak classified as a military satellite and human intelligence. Advanced shoot. First, this task force not about IP, even that the recent US BTO action does not the diplomatic military agency evidence about amateur blocking links, no coherent internal link to any scenario. U2C class means give the blocking human answers, and Trump destroys the entire advantage, makes interagency cooperation of hospital destroy. Drug supply RK is already cooking the hospital funding and cooperation. There's no solvency in all costs. There are entire articles about PTO cooperation about patents. Here's the conclusion. One day say Labala 16. Invalid patents are problematic. They have an innovation competition hard because yet no policy agency patents and time has come for a publication to investigate. No accidental impact is disease sailing 23. Pandemics alone are not endemic. Pandemics are likely to bring the extinction humanity to survive pandemics and vaccinating with some most global pandemics. A group may isolate someone may not infect some groups of people greater resistant than the sanitation and advancement of medicine, which is medical system have capacity to mitigate terminal spread. All causes of NDCA, the pandemic, and FDA 41 to Mark 24. Drug doesn't become actually skip that card. The status quo solves FDA. They highlighted corporate independent. Next time says the corporate rejecting upholding the FCA. 1 to see Rep 17. It's the second question whether one lawful use make the active actor independent. The argument the lawful use of corporate reject the argument. That disease good pandemics occur scientific diplomacy appears but they reduce attention solves work. 1 minute for 22 20. With government willingness to work on national managers and how stakeholders come together, the Ebola academic organization, philanthropy, private sector, working on the country, both to develop understanding government, tactics, diplomacy, reducing the critical society, organization, we need scientific ones, navigating the market path ahead, mark that ahead. Disease causes widespread global cooperation, Davis, that all. What's the date on this card? 22. Diplomatic enterprise, health governance movement, confidence, the durable system, the potential blockages, and not inhibited the knowledge sharing, advocacy, cooperation, innovation across national boundaries, calls for global cooperation, thrive in the face of multilateralism, and only existing health governance network, engagement, secure participation with all global network cooperation, has been operational. Vice focus in modulus and environmental effects, minimizes risk and use of power, extinction, constitute all 16. Science and potential reshape diplomacy, role to play science, technology, science, diplomacy, trying to eliminate intermarkets, economy, biodiversity, extinction, resource, environment, aggressive, nothing, where other jobs, fair life, conditions, winning with a great effort, and will force estimated marginal, mark that at marginal, and no risk of contagious cancers. Hundreds of million evolution is proven. Johnson 16. There's no limit to contagious cancers. Only happen on the most unusual cancer and intoxication religion went further with no specific cancer against an aberration. Cancer is already existing of multicellular ancestors of pre-armor. Margaret, are you good? 1 sec. We get a sip of water. I'm good.
What exactly do you,
Sure, the alternative is that the United States would endorse programs of democratic social planning.
Hold on, endorse, does that mean enact or just like say they're desirable?
We think that it's a little bit of both. We think that affording of desirability from the perspective of the government is uniquely key. The SORP card describes how those movements have already been mobilized.
Wait, so the government does not actually enact any policies for central.
Well, that was what I was getting to. Secondly, the government it helps the starting point by enacting policies for democratic, decentralized cybernetic planning.
What are those policies?
Sure, the SOAR card describes a couple of things. It describes, Harvey, you'll answer this better than me. What are those policies?
It creates certain things like worker councils, we abolish IP. It also creates a governmental cybernetic management flow systems.
A management flow system? What is that?
Sure, it could look like a lot of things, but we think given the current state of US technology, it could look like a website that can track X manufacturing or X thing that's happening in a certain section and cross-apply it elsewhere to increase efficiency, etc.
Or does that solve growth in other countries or even in the US?
Yeah, so the SOAR card makes the point that there are several of these, it calls them like jumpstart that have started in other countries. I think it describes like Cuba, Peru, a couple states in a couple countries in Africa, a couple small countries in Asia, in which these pocket movements have already started. However, it says the thing that's kind of holding them up right now is that there does not exist large endorsement by a large government, i.e. such as a superpower government like the United States. The sword card says that if that were to happen, such as the movements that Hungary has described, that there would be a spillover across the world that would allow for kind of a global destabilization of capitalism. Sorry, status quo is always a logical policy.
Okay, the process power plan, when you say binding, does that mean the USG has to say yes?
No, it's just that the risk review is binding in the
What
sense
does it mean
that,
to be binding?
in the sense that the risk review will always exist. The United States can.
So binding just means it like exists and does not go away.
No, the United States federal government will do what.
They do, okay, so they do have to say. Yes.
Depending on what the risk review says.
So
will
they
they follow
don't,
our
okay,
cards.
no, do they have to, or is it dependent on what they want to do?
We think they will say that.
That's not an answer. to my
Yeah,
question.
it's not binding in the sense that they will
Okay.
follow, they will.
What's the benefit of legalization?
I'm sorry?
Legalization and benefit?
What is the benefit?
He's good.
Is he good?
How?
We'll explain it in March.
It's not, okay. I wanna go to the China case. Does the alternative do anything other than reject the plan, reject the app?
Sure, we think that the alternative wants the ballot and the ballot serves as an engagement and recognition.
Once the ballot. Right.
Put it back when you're done.
We'll do that.
It's Russia here, right?
Yeah. Advantage one. Advantage two. A new page. No agencies for two groups. The captive. Heineken. The advantage paragraph. And then the different one.
Yeah, the points also lead innovation because it allows for interstate commerce. So theory cards is that trademarks in particular allow for cross-border exchange because it incentivizes companies to expand into other states because they know they can get trademarks in those other states. So they expand commerce all across the United States and into other nations. The Holmes card does not is one guy's research and the marijuana research on whole is low, but this is our argument either way because marijuana research may be high, but it's not being exported and commercialized between the other countries and other states. Not use those innovations in the first place. They say other work plants solve nuclear radiation. Sure, that might be correct, but they're not being implemented in the status quo. And further weed innovation is necessary because it increases planting of weed, which will soak up radiation from a nuclear fallout. They say yes, AMR impacted. They conceded they conceded that once AMR is integrated into the microbiome, they collapse key earth cycles, killing ecosystems that sustain human life. That's what Carol. The junkie card is wrong. One, it's just one way to do so, but it's not being implemented. And two, it's just preliminary studies. They're saying that it might happen, and the implementation now is key because engineered patents will otherwise arise, especially quickly after combining drug resistant posting and meat threat. That's our Johnson Evans, Chinese promotion funding because marijuana is the reason they propel to a global powerhouse, which is a quote from our evidence. They don't have other funding because our evidence says that China is cracking down on all other methods. To make money, yes, East Asian conflict, Chinese Ukraine, undermines weak states, ignite regional conflicts that go nuclear. That's clap and their evidence about petty crimes in China, not Chinese organized crime. They say no weed smuggling. No card is not a GOP conspiracy theorist, and believe it or not, it comes from a professor at Harvard who says that the nuclear bombs will come barrels of marijuana. And they also can see that the Mexican cartels there are increasing now to digitalized markets that don't require intense regulation, which otherwise causes arms races and a nuclear war. That's happening eventually. PTO, durable PTO helps any PTO cooperation warrants, but we didn't read this in the 1AC. I mean, you can see laundry lists are bad impact, and you should strike them off your flow. It takes out the internal. On the counterplan, yes, it can the constitution by collapse of society, ending of geoengineering of the stratosphere, current collapse of society, infection of all humans, as well as Taylor is unqualified, and doesn't give any warrants for. It doesn't assume knock-on effects that would end up causing extinction. They say slow assaults the FDA. That's wrong. Rate says that's legal uncertainty in the status quo in our Kumar card. And this is that causes the our Kumar card says that's being implemented by big pharma to strike down compound drugs, disease food. Yes, the one there's no like reference to conventional pandemic. It causes changes in society. A new unprecedented pandemic would cause societal collapse. Said 2 case outbreaks on time frame pandemic trigger. Knock-on effects that constitute before solves anything. Science policy fails. Empirically found warrants COVID. Thank you for expanding the way that FD1. Public university sectors and when you recommend global navigation time difficult to science policy trouble. Based on the reception for exception and implementation line. Also grounded in evidence lyrics from climate change that out of the banks from the fake news and support this research crisis in our organization built to keep basic therapy, how to science informed. I feel like the taxes themselves finding from still not trying to resolve the required subjective. The global cooperation warrant is wrong. COVID proves away. 524, 2 years of negotiating without a global you're going to have best in the world experience and the show was aspirated agreement. COVID building is for healthcare systems and disrupting countries of points difference about sharing information and vaccines and treating and priority issues and disease verifies inequality, food security, financial stability, and all other directions probably tell us from Purpose 40 organized academic functions of tax media and often reward the piece of strong gold index to provide 23 infants from ongoing constitutions deteriorated over the last 40 years, most individuals of items of restrictions, which are 50% stemming to 12 areas that national listing nationwide pandemic and again compounding sustained become health and health problems can aspirate over cost of socioeconomic inequality, increase the risk of health worldwide and level infectious lasting death, corresponding to active food insecurity, putting in links that risk of payment, the neoliberal structures compound and resulting in countries with poor credit unable to borrow repay debt, leading to political instability compound, dealing with tourists and gas cancer evolves fast once it hits metastatic. The cascade only community that's to do shot is more qualified in their evidence says that their possibility exists still, which Chinese try to still close out. U.S. Agent for the justification as numbers social basis as some critical arbitrary and bad news complex and decent to research equal reasonably error out reasonably no social basis makes computing interpretation generally or clear observing and equally regressive. All three arguments should be made on this page. The comments about our disposals, one straight back by nature of class and education, two critics state best ideas. I don't have to see. One, we need PTO of trademarks qualifies to meet professional transfer to 2018. PTO issues plans to meet 59 yards. 400 PTOs providing private protection and 2 points explanation of activity objectivity. And after all, apparently still solve courts and knowledge. While the use because it's for reference, three striking protection is probably right. So all 18 extraordinary is recorded in the section featuring kind of arbitration rate. Find the variables for the action for the review and protection shall be reversed to be for first protection for the right center. Just to make it required. If you respond to the back protection each refer so the research for all strength and protection. Prefer a briefly arguments based on best protections. Then finds the best is quote I found the PTO and courts templates are become a P4 from the speech stack. Clogging this templates and other extracts stack. One, for recommended plan of consequences against police to be able to interpret arbitrary self-serving and unpredictable when you see claim prior questions for the impact and strength of good and class maximizes any benefit to the way to versus sample right 20. The 27th value measures are completely wrong before the confidence that'll run out and happen in the second couple of spiritual respect and all issues for the most value use and value in a better way. Basically to grow more fun value user the economy has the grow up with consumption decrease and we're getting more from less. Keep influence against every impact of our house and also two. Addition or three is on link to episode treatments probably not. Then the concepts of the app and four go back to the 3 page private activity is making sure you possible review everyone's individual back to cap K5 from to go to the revolution of also capitalism spoke from also like 6 all fails a transition towards domestic operation causes conflict and election progressive right wings populace will go back into capitalism firm to the app and abolish IP and all other instances all evidences that we can maintain specific markets in the transition pros the first also win the place solution to short-term three such perspectives a question of how democracy abolish market social reasons to that post-capitalist transformation you do not abolish on this full leading others and tackle capitalism with needs to safeguarding error nature's democratic self-rule society scientific and capitalized planning fails even though the perfect egg the all ensure difficult authoritarians and the Rex innovation because investors leaders will take over China. And there's no like we didn't securitize China, we just securitized organized crime, which is good in the context of the affirmative because Chinese organized crime causes the Constitution of the United States. To all and to everyone, it's just bad, and we should learn about that. Sweeney June is wrong. We can know a predictive analysis based on what experts can tell us. Taxation must come first. 1 year preserving existence. If future generations the African students need to live to fight another day and enact the alternative to scope, extinction that kills everyone. Access to the global suffering at a global scale. The Alta can't solve it. Doesn't do the African causal influence that reverse causally solver scenarios. The Alta does a floating picture of radiation. They seal the app or back to theory floating picture of radiation. They seal the app. They should be next to dying app often than the administrator. 1 from the both 2 from the top line 3 from the plan and any combo of the planks 4 links that benefit because it solves advantage 1 which solves disease as well as 5 it violates international conventions for international law of the INCB which wrecks the United States perception globally causing destruction of international law which causes extinction. They didn't have an advocate for the plank so we don't need an advocate for the impact turn and R&D fails predictions not funny if we're process transformation is this commercial innovation from asymmetric info focus no more than administering and the expected return, market return, CRR. 1 no internal anal spillover, 1 instance in terms of the lawful use doctrine doesn't solve law across CRR application be no impact and seed strike strike off modulus from above and they give no specific instance of the extinction which means it's a moral hazard to buy the town plan 2 from the town plan is the way the plan 3 from the town plan then the app 4 from the plan and town plan and other issues Russell will send out text town plan contextually and functionally competitive maximize remain comparison after an objectivity 6 perm develop or 5 can't perm develop solve control 6 P2 action scheme goes from 2 this word language of the requirement P2 door features on them. Discuss that features to requirement for people all use also features reasoning. This feature problems that can be text features to all features taken by comma. PCO certain writer require rights to wrong acts of agency of has a breaks.
All right, you good? All right, what were the theoretical reasons to reject the team? Should they all be under this new page?
Yeah. Condo. And then floating fix and private equity.
Cool. All right, let's start off on the CRR counterplan. The PTO action is key argument. Why does that affect the counterplan?
Yeah, because under the counterplan, you recommend doing the plan, and then it's the federal government's choice to follow through. It's just the PTO says no to that.
Okay, cool. All right, let's talk about the China K. This epistemology card, what's the word? Oh, I have a fair point.
Well, you didn't read any of the cards in the
Okay, cool.
Wait, actually, question real quick, where did you read private active fiat?
Chapter.
I guess.
All right, on the first advantage, the second advantage. Going back to the Satsupur card, it's not explicitly about IP. Why is the plan key?
I'm like pretty sure we read those anyways.
Okay, that's fine. The vaccine diplomacy argument, the Copeland card talks about like science diplomacy in terms of cooperation with the Asia Pacific. Why is that a referendum on it?
Where did we talk about the vaccine?
Or the science diplomacy?
Oh,
sorry.
Yeah. The Copeland card?
Yeah.
So what was the question?
It's like why is this applicable to like all instances of science diplomacy if it's like talking about 1 or 2?
I don't think
think it's talking about one or two. I think it's making a broader thing about why the idea of science diplomacy and why now in the 21st century doesn't work.
Okay, cool. The growth is sustainable card, the population, actually, the sword card, this re-highlight, what do you think this, like, what's the word inside of this re-highlight?
It explains how we can leave certain institutions intact when we abolish markets and abandon the capitalist system, which is an advocate for the permutation, because when you move, the permutation will probably look like doing the app and then central planning in all other instances, which, you know, is what your all advocate for the all says is possible.
Sure. That's the advantage counter plan. The con card is largely about is largely about. Yeah, I agree. It's largely about price. Thinking of a question here. Actually, no, the McKay card, the.
I didn't know.
Darn. The first advantage, the engineered pathogens argument is the idea that
With increased resistance to antibiotics, engineered pathogens are easier to create and easier to permeate into society.
unique pathogen.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's the K.
Which one?
The. It's the overview, by the way. I'm not gonna read that.
That's.
Is that real big? Rhetorical field children by Elijah like object as part of a larger world. Counter interpretation of what is an object study. The rules and negatives provide the outcome order that the way in which the affirmative is constructed is flawed. Human interpretation A when links only against other quotes 50% and when you see this in human link you lose. They waste left the one you system just be you must prioritize the most approximate real impact the one you see rhetoric value what is the most immediate real impact of the one you see prefer is the education decide the link that proves the app result in bad education, which is the only material impact of the one you see that will be below B is versus temporality set. Here's one politics story, disembodied politics and views of blending by rising minds. Links which Time-based repetition, technology, technology, with white ones, future functions, dehumanization aside, each stage of programming against which present is specified, each stage are tied to lines with it, disembodiment constitutes a will consult when this body is one of the extreme question order, as an object of desire, cut back into a repetitive future solution, technology, some features, disembodying bodies, no longer representation, the distracted world of authority narrative, only visible are diabolical. C is the simulation is that the brain prioritizes hypothetical discussion, state policy making, which is the project of linguistic and cultural simulation, forcing nations and ways standardization, reproduce the original melancholy by further dividing between the yellow barrel and the mono iterating the simulation groups, the split oration, starting divided that shows many furnishing clash of saying 19. We have extensions of regional malfunctioning individuals, personality, association, repression, and second competencies on cultural life, including production and reading neural common formations of regional malcolia, neuroversing workforce, our community, order, parallel, of economic productivity, efficiency, the good racial difference, macro order, witness, when you look order, marking, racial exclusion, and access to bias and access to the different psychic phenomena, association improves on stable connects, a second predicament, racial, dissociation, fundamental psychic structure, in relation to stereotypes, model minorities, as psychopathic, and emotional seed, knowledge, and accumulation, is said, MBA model debate fantasy based on racial standard, forcing a largely by white man that's an immigrant, not their clash community reflexivity, some of their model because the exclusion research that is made by liberal norms use exclusion to set, removing these active policing agents and happily removing them from academic spaces. That's two. Now, predictability is wrong, moderate, predictable, allegations of plan, justifications are distinct from representations because the reason to vote after they chosen two, there's some machine between this a case like this, that head was represented, proof is definitely predictable. Class one, class one, impact until they've proven there are some violent ethics proceeds comparisons that happen that go back to after it's all depicted their impact. Now they have to implement the three, initial church offensive debate or test examining because unquestioned assumptions that make it a good idea. Fourth, the one answer is it's only a question of competition, but equity encourages colonial anti-racist future the implication of their argument means putting out incentivized debate scholarship the same person five is bringing any evidence they run, any evidence that they put in the doc that the branch shows that they're good having some level of class. Now fairness, one, cross-applied ethics away from above, two, fairness ensuring not an impact on us, fair debate produces material outcome like education, when like to get improve their material outcome, help us to compassion their internal different threes, non-unique, debate short to them, but now, whenever like some group debaters of various backgrounds talking they actually be more likely to lose scores based on paradox. That would be below five instructional fairness. These competitive procedural fairness on fairness is good monopoly, child assumptions, monopoly, power to make it good about for the people war. Moment 111. Because there is nature of proportion of care, which is very one of these games, is probably very fairness again, it's an opportunity to construct it. In this game, this game is rated opportunity for privileged students to experience of fairness, competitive fairness, is the world of fair, the experience of losing other players, losing out, increase how they think that there's a teaching moment, and 6 is compartmentalized, actually 21. Pursuit of fairness, not considered whether the outcome of the decision was fair, or rather the process was very sad, is the racism paradox, fair valuation and racist model more fair than before. Racial microaggression, stress, depression, and health, and exposure costs, negative psychological symptoms, which academic speech circulation right now. The ballot, one, it doesn't matter what the ballot means, the ballot endorsement or objection to one is object research means you don't have to run slow for argument to use competitive deterrence. By voting negative, a competitive person can be said to use losing the sovereignty of part 3, you can allow can't stop the international obligation act like does for the data restriction of anti-Asian epistemology score is microaffirmation. So 23. Microaffirmation of not being microaggressions, affirm marginalized energy experiences and justice acknowledgements, conveying inclusion those who feel like energy, who feel positive sense of belonging, from acknowledgement, affirmation that make feelings and behaviors validated, and still sense of capability, affirmation that make others taking feel better from harmful practices, finding energy and solves. The drop all in the debate is an example of consistent resistance cost critique, which is uniquely key for subject formation. 1 C. Showman is inserted 6 neurology, tool 17. Rhetoric and shape the right protection argumentation and the thoughts and beliefs. Discrepancies in mind, like the brain on masculine complexity as we become an operation, runs continue to fire on his mapping responsibility. Other everything covered, contrary to the version of the conscious rationality taught somebody that to our physical bodies, a repetition of trans thought, affection of mineral conscious way, perspective of wrong, individual agency. Now, utility base relevant is illusory, which means the movement framework you can't evaluate utility because voting after nothing to solve any of the impacts of going for now. Debating and asking one versus debate, and taking the round on the empty of tab after it's uncomfortable, taking away technical debate is a neutral, comfortable form. To its backlash, it makes the debaters seem drastic and escalatory, which is met with violence not empathy. Now, offense the autonomy to said, denying minority the opportunity to directly challenge their aggressive self headaches and heart issues. Dot 23. Race liking and psychological manipulation can adapt and version virtual body fatigue include cognitive psychological anxiety and psychological headache, elevated heartbeat, something about the release for the perpetrator, and to end with their own harmful intent, feel loss of control and institutionalization. Kado is wrong on terms that we get, we did one explanation, flexibility, check back against live bias, natural fitness, to logic, this really the plan of good reason innovation, the debaters of discovery, the ability to have public tracks, the only driving committee reports opportunities for non-resident readers, whatever you say, activity, 90% one, two, not approach, 16, 3, 2, Christian checking for the counter for sharing, and benefits, we reject every amount of team, this book is bad for cheating, problem sports forms, and every dissent has to be never, but every kind of one, the one is out there, it's wrong, we're not a pig, we also know, do private actor, yeah, now the firm's foundation, motivation, opportunities as company political methods, the firm has to defend its scholarship, this includes systematic foundation, the firm is either severance or intrinsic, which are both independent voting issues, destroys revolutionary grounds, two pieces of bankruptcy, this has to find with the amount of buyer, the firm, methodological, tourism is specifically bankrupt, society with ignores, racism, the structure of the world now, three links are this, I'll do them now. Any notion of a trying to throw exposure with the real world violence on the Zone 15 card that they conceded specifically says that Western people don't form a difference between the Chinese government, the Chinese organized crime, and the Chinese people. So inevitably, any indication of the quote China's threat will spill over to real world violence. Specific examples in the past, like Trump saying the COVID virus from China is the exact proof of this. Trump said over and over it's the China virus, it's the China virus, and yes, the virus is from China, but that still led to violence to Asian people. Now they definitely link to this. Their clap card is like all major bringing out for transnational criminal networks are emanating from China, clearly demonstrating much China threat. But apparently the Motel evidence, I'm not going to read all this, but this is just their lines for you to see. It clearly talks about how Chinese organized crime is dominating illegal activities and becoming a global powerhouse, etc. Which means it definitely links. Now, threat real doesn't matter. It will not matter if you consider every single instance where they claim threat is real, strong link. It does not matter if Japanese auto workers in the 1980s actually displaced auto worker jobs, those up to real world violence. Just like I said above, Trump said that the virus from China was, but that rhetoric still led to violence. Now the temporality link crosses like the link card for here, future winter politics that specularized Asian violence is uniquely bad. And Fiat itself is an act of techno-orientalist, through techno-oriented speculation understands the Asians through a hyper technological terms, yet imagine that the plan is already occurred, which is the techno-orientalism imaginary, which imagines an alternative role in invasion behavior in relation to their representation. The framework analysis analyzes techno-orientalist patterns that conflate Asian as the technology that's soon and through the IPR looks like the IPR works on the broadest US goal to protect from the other in being the Chinese and the China threat from Chinese ownership, which is rooted in the irrational fear of Chinese rise and the original sin of Chinese ownership. That was so and Sue, that was above. Now the alternative debate on next engaging in general, which represents a practice of resistance techno-orientalist tropes, only to constant discourse, constant resistance, constant critique. Can we break the duality of techno-orientalism, free Asians from racialized code? This is the only way to do it. The China threat is already being racialized against Asians. So you know the all now is key now. All else is wrong because we don't try to solve the case. A framework means that you evaluate real world violence first, which the all solves. Also independently classify the ballot sums and stuff here. That's also part of the alternative.
Hang on 1 second. Yeah. 2 seconds taken.
17.
Thank you.
Yep. So it seems that you believe some type of racism has occurred in this round. Do you want to stop around and go to tavern?
I've already read reasons why that's bad.
Okay, let's talk about that. So if someone says the N-word or a racial slur around, calls some other debater a slur, should that be debated out or should the judge stop the round?
I'm not going to answer that question because I don't think it's.
I'm asking about your model framework, right? You said debating out, racism is good. So if I'm called a slur, should I have to endure that through debate or should I stop the round of your model?
I don't think that's related to what we're talking about.
You said debating out racism is good, right? So
Well, there's a difference between certain forms of racism. Like, if I just started calling.
Wait. So there's difference. So like you can just pick and choose like
no
forms of racism.
Like
they're just like how there are worse crimes in the world, like there's some crimes that are like murder, and then some crimes like robbing, like robbery are obviously less than murder.
Okay, so like. So going into tavern is selective and we should only debate it out in certain instances.
No,
That's
okay,
your-
first,
First.
the dot evidence is specific to
Yeah,
just minority
you're
debaters.
saying-
should be
you're saying
able
that
to
we
count
do it selectively.
Okay,
right?
sure.
And the dot evidence says that minority debaters should always have autonomy, but tell me why you don't think back to this.
How, explain why I'm moving back to this.
Okay, I wanna move on. What is the justification of interpretation?
Every single dissent we read, you want me to go through every single one?
Well, I'm more asking about your framework interpretation. What does it mean for like one AC to be an object of study, and what does it mean
Sure,
for
we think the
links
role,
off justifications?
sure, we think the role of the negative is to prove either the outcome or the way in which the affirmative has constructed or affirmative through your representations, your justifications, etc.
So what is the justification?
Sure, we think the justifications of your impacts, like Chinese O crime, is that China is a threat. That's an underlying justification or an underlying.
Wait, that's like in the sentences and unhighlighted parts of your card. Does that mean?
Well, no, it's part of your, it is in your highlighted part of your card, like the clap part that I re-highlighted, I just put your blue highlighting in green.
But you have to
to
disprove
make
the
it
rest
easier
of
to
the one
see.
AC, the one AC.
Okay, sure, but if you read racist parts of the one AC, then obviously I'm gonna point those parts out, like.
Yeah,
There's no standard saying your one AC has to be 100% racist for me to read the K.
Yeah, last thing, you said can you explain how you don't double turn yourself with a 1 and 11 card? You said unfairness is good and that your model is fair.
We just said we're predictable, we did not necessarily say we're fair.
Okay, so your model is not fair.
We never said that either.
Okay.
These are all.
One and all said. The order is the risk review counter plan. The cap K. The advantage counter plan. Or you could. No, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
The counterbalance of the entirety of the case is to jumping this right that IP against the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, known as OARA for short, to study the status quo to determine its effects on posterity. It then proposes a modified version to the plan to optimize its downstream risk distribution and adopts a plan only if we remove the status quo determines that inaction creates catastrophic risk. That's a little more than 2. That solves the case and maintains the process that creates a role process to practically shape regulatory agendas in favor of existential risk regulation, enabling responses to asteroid and bio and WMD, specifically AI. That constitutes Goal 23. Biases including generation of outlandish speech, producing discriminatory hierarchy ideas with an accurate misleading response to ability to manipulate AI to environment do the unprecedented together hearts will be responses out of business scales known as black swans data capabilities emerge without warning the present content we cannot assume AI are safe by default aside from practically AI community has a large scale societal harm no novel application AI can give rise to new challenges to raise autonomous necessity to optimize agriculture processing costs large scale complicated environmental degradation AI system improves inaccurate or partial information policy making tyrannical social unconventional risk analysis encourages policy making to stress rates seems wrong or difficult to quantify. They say no internally but single ruling spell out proof of concept ORA means as the template for subsequent actions that kind of outlines how the agency can engage in existential risk agenda setting, which empowers an existing pro-regulatory constituencies and enables consistency to a more regularized process of review. That's 1C a little bit more. And our 1C was not a laundry list, specifically listed combating cyber and ours basic, but we have that above. They say do the counterplan, but it's effort, which is the voting issue for NetGraph, then argument and degree responsibility. First stopping mechanism for grassroots implementation. A rights or entitlements. The counterplan evidence is merely conducts a study and regretting regard rights. Dealt with in 13. Rights and findings is not going to have or retain something. B legal protection must be permanent and precludes further study. Ross 19 protective absolute precludes any possibility of future discussion. 2 STEM requires certainty and immediate resolve. Words of 64. Resolve is defined as established by law. Shows mandatory. 17. In an ordinary government meeting, the board should mandatory obligation to use the excessive community and meetings. 17. The board should mandatory should be met, but not due to aspiration, but a mandatory term prefer. 17 means the key to ground of politics, trade-off, extended relying guaranteed implementation, conditionality based on moving target that shift out of best argument. 5 is no one means it's ex post OER review, not ex ante. That's Livermore. Normally should govern competition to base of literature, predictable both sides of fair because they only have to depend on one process. They say permutation is a counterplan, and then the plan first is that it fails. Establish an EDC. Words in the resolution step requirement is best for count. That's onto the counterplan and its intrinsic and adds delay specified into the plan to the counterplan. B adopt needs to take something new. That's Cambridge Dictionary 24. Adopt to start to use something new. The purpose is distinct by the time the plan occurs. The plan practice is already used within the counterplan. That's a distinct process from the policy adoption stack. Exchange 20. Both adopt and use represent utilized to adopt does not merely mean to use to adopt. You must start using it to take up new means acting by only adopted lines of the actual acts if they already use fire. Lying is immoral. The verb plans to do by actually skip the Missouri card. And our definition deputy best test. They say verbs other issues did intrinsic which is illegit. First is that the function of the counterplan reviews the plan, nothing else. The grounds and the ruling one action, the rationale is not a separate step. They can be barred for the permit. The plan was voted after the counterplan is voted on politics. The permit vote after now and vote for politics in a different debate is obviously intrinsic. Second is that functional intrinsic is illegitimate. Proves the plan is insufficient. Allows new to easy plans to be a unpredictable advantage. Additional action by the most powerful actor on earth. So any DA league. 3 is that reject counter interpretation. The intrinsic can be logically limited while struggling to destroy other ground. They say texting function, but textual competition is bad. A is negation under texting function. Any plan wouldn't compete with doing that. Proves it fails as a model for testing more than policies. Trade off. B is reward. Decision making look to function compatibility. Not text in the vacuum. C is ground and D is zero offense. They say do both, but do links or steppers, which is voting issue for net ground versus mutual exclusion. The counterplan adopts the plan only if it passes review. The plan beyond the plan unconditionally means firm because the logically paradoxical war was the plan is both banned and mandated. Second is that it doesn't solve. The net benefit is about an action to review regulatory inaction to prompt engagement in an area of current policy neglect. The first bills the regulatory void which negates ORA's agenda setting which choosing which areas require action in the first place. That's number one. Only reviewing inaction solves bolts ORA review back in line with conventional CDA which zeros the net benefit. That's also a little more. Now go to solvency proper. They'll say yes. First is fiat guarantees genuine good faith evaluation of the plan under posterity. First CDA standard, the one is equals to plan with bachelor plan coverage, that's number 2 is that new standard ensures the standard being introduced by the counterplan views ORA with the post-regulatory benefit comments the historical patterns of capital Levine. 23 capture one of the approach would exacerbate little new data politicized with all the political ORA and regulatory benefits ORA not fundamental capture one channel the patch for particular purposes relying on administrative and new opportunity for influence design and resist influence of special interest. Now they say certainty, but there's no certainty deficit. First is efficiency. The internals are based on substance, not process. The vast majority of the advantage is about policy and action was counterplan solved. Even if the plan is slightly better, the ton of generic process based on solvency evidence is the one they see the counterplan captures completely. Second is that process solves. Even if it's uncertainty in the interim, that's quickly resolved by the agreement, producing an outcome that's identical to the plan. Third, certainty to a DA is better. The counterplan is better. Fourth is the agency with slap regulatory agenda, second the OER standard that approves certainty. That's 122. CPA can allow for a safe harbor to review the existing standard relieving the activation of the legitimate raised by reviewers and reducing arbitrary interference standardization review. Creating consumer review process with the parameters specified by the way array to avoid scrutiny standards and seize the common that naturally rise. Capitalism K concede the purpose as a competition. Theories of reason to reject the argument, not the team. Advantage counterplan concede the purpose as a competition. Theories of reason to reject the argument, not the team. All other theory that was rated on that theory page is reason to reject the argument, not the team. I have
750. First advantage. The CRR counterplan. Question.
Well, one of a dog, so.
Yeah. Alright, so.
Oh, there we go. Alright, I'm good.
Cases of lunch China war environmental overshoot constitution DRR kind of plan. The PGO says no to the complaint that ignore without any sexual support. That's because none of their evidence to involve use or any of the content contemplate if they fiat it and if things are right then. But part of the conflict is they literally fiat the plan it's not and none of them short not any court apply. Now part of the app, but the contemplate of other issues contemplates will be textually and functionally connected for objectivity, work that their meaning functions or indistinguishable undefinable options stating predictability. Framing issue. The 1 hour is completely unclear here. Same goes for the 2 do some speaking Joel Westminster. They say negative Afghan ways permitting function only contemplates just salute cheating makes blood protection, delay, consult commission, which are impossible to be conceived definitions part of the contemplating agencies and regulatory mechanisms which narrow spillover, main contemplates the cap all checks, snowballing is wrong, limited to testing either the text or function of each permutation. They say it's illegitimate, it's not textually true because it includes all the words of the planet. They say the cross on news when see place, they have their contributing section function which checks says reject counterterms is wrong because it's logical because they get counterterm to they cross substantial above there from giving down or each of asking delete not scramble right but text plus all debates working so it's good. I can't real education real world text and functions solving consider functions too which is better logic based on policy analysis in the game but semantic the debate over real world is better than the judicial sphere voting for non-debate complex is illogical that China game. Framework play the place consequences against leaks of data indication there in terms of arbitrary unfairly shifting the votes debate away from the one to see. To the prior question and nuclear unfair that unfairness used to debate. Let's work today with the impacts of fairness and its intrinsic the good its foundational to prevent debate. We're both teams expecting equal shots to win, especially sure they've invested in the government job argument. Said live and will be said if you had an unfair decision and concede. Reject numbers theory from conduct jurisdictionally cannot vote for framework because it is not resolutional. Now roll the judge to vote for you who debated better about the document else no education the fairness or this no incentive to learn in an unfair game. Got no link to the racial temporality. It's not temporally displaced in order to require a technological future inherency means you didn't believe in the plans like you're going to cross that to the same technical imaginary VR below. Then says the narrative also contains recent pictures of East Station, not that it must inserted. Never read its turn fiasco because it's fair, only needed in consequences. Other plan is preferable. No melancholy MTA or assimilation DA. Beyond simple love applies. It's also about a fictional movie character. Psychological empirical sport is directed for 21. Check out for the psycho one kid. Psychoanalysis brings out for 42 cautious not. Receiving empirical sport psycho attack. Other result of shooting class. There's no good F. Possibly stock going for class. So no impact. So under reason like 70 so you can read the K and lose which results it's the predictable set of context prove that justifications is progressive. They say it's predictable because work preference. Yes, they recycle work like blocks. No, we don't have it because it's still not predictable and it's still unfair. App choices wrong framework makes it negative choices. Plan is predictable because it's an instance of the resolution and the plan is topical. They say competitive sentence says you're wrong because they compare the concept of resolution which their arguments are resolution. They say well there's parameters I can't really understand what they're saying. Loads about clash with relevant fairness is not interrelated. Oh, in the doc is not falsifiable, and we couldn't have engaged in your infinite proliferation of PRKs in the 20 or the 20 which is also unpredictable fairness and internally. Here to explain that above this terminal, which they rely on non-unique is their relevant or impacts for structural, not structural, racial, racism paradox. It's genuinely nonsense. Probably you can they rely on fairness too, just like in racism paradox, and that was all why balance only care about fairness, structural fairness was answered above compartmentalization is wrong because our impacts is also procedural, so it answers this semblance or whatever card the ballot. I just said the ballot does solve our offense, but not theirs. It can't solve the scope of their impact. We're not model debate or fill out on the strongest basis does not change us. We switch sides and participate in hundreds of ground feet arguments you don't believe in or spend more time in school and family. There's only a chance we double down and internalize this law says take no failure going for these arguments better in the future, but pursuing ballot sovereignty is worse because it heightens the stakes of competitive interaction to bring the turn community solidarity and causing interpersonal microaggression. You can remedy our fairness effect zoning down. Not really causes they use consequential than anything else arbitrary and tautological and also relies on consequences. They say well about I answered that above the competitive deterrence is wrong because well more likely to affect our K blocks because it's unreasonable burden for us to have every kid in the system that is unpredictable. The disruption is wrong because you cannot and change their thousands of routes micro affirmation turn vote app and congratulate them for a great round that solves the micro affirming them. The ballot is not key to this. All does not solve anything. There's no system of resistance that your ballot sets up in this round. The jewel card. Their studies are back to response to competitive attendance for time limits. Only we have evidence about adversarial rhetoric. That's no, I actually stretch that, but it doesn't seem to be competitive attendance. Jewel relies on Cartesian dualism being wrong, which is obviously stupid. Jewel is also a white woman using slurs. Insert the conclusion of their article. So they're more racist. That's true. They say debating it out is debating microaggressions is good. Fiat is illusory, it's irrelevant because it's predictable, because Brett says USMT should, so that's how we trap. The debating microaggression is bad. One, moral hazard, limited speech times, and misforce on the flow. Turns advantage into a bad form, two, adjudicating interpersonal disputes. Two, false positives, they're not perfect, and misidentification saturates racial tensions. Three, enforced endurance is bad for minorities to endure microaggression for 2 hours instead of stopping the ground. They say type debate is neutral, it's not. That's where all the instructional parents arguments are more importantly said. It's limited time limits goes our way, then backlash is inevitable, and not going to go solvable by about autonomy DA is wrong because you still have the autonomy to leave the ground to do other things in the debate. Now the beliefs are all irrelevant because they're excluded by primary, but more importantly said, our reps are true, which means and they won't solve the strong because they're powerful by the rounds are great.
Russell, you didn't read the Ferreira card, right?
I did.
Oh, you did, okay.
Oh, my.
How do I get to the purpose of the competition and here's the reason we're trying to get everyone on the team? Okay. The role of the judge is over the was the way every time you find yourself in find books of big sticking crowds out there to the end of my life, then of course in here is a moment you start pause and ask yourself why you're comfortable risking lives being done against people called to preserve the white norms. This should be your first and foremost priority. How can nations learn when their space is being defined by terror? This means that you must wear links only against other portions of the conditions presented in the 1AC and that you must prioritize the most proximate real impacts to the 1AC rhetoric. That also takes out util means util doesn't matter because if we win framing then you don't evaluate fiat and hypotheticals. Now the extend the simulation descent here drop several claims to this and means solve the model debate, force division and white standardization, reproduce racial melancholy through state action. By further dividing yellow pair model minority because simulation creates a psych liberation starting the binary producing psychic violence ang and has as well as solution. First we drop that the psychic violence produced by their model is intergenerational, that's ang 19, which means that our impact range generations based debaters of voting app only helped MBA in this one round. Second, we drop the psychic violence into spear, burner, panic attacks, etc. in round that's ang, which means under their model no Asian debaters can access any of their so-called benefits. Third, drop psychic violence under Asian debaters. That turns any fairness often they have left. The psychoanalysis card is wrong. First, only the first part of the article relies on psychoanalysis. So read the article later. The second part is identified based on real clinical studies. Independently, their psychoanalysis card is also terrible. It's one paragraph long. It doesn't cite any studies or any work before, which means our evidence is definitely better. Now, the fairness paradox is proper incoherent. One is compartmentalized. This was barely answered. We can evaluate certain aspects of evaluation without valuing others like outcome. That's not necessarily procedural, etc. But the serious evidence proves that there often proves this because they went for no linking global fairness argument from the 2AC, which proves sometimes the fairness like opportunity are different from others like outcome. About the outcome, the vote because the game is already globally fair. Two, the simulation is that turns fairness that was above. The reason is the paradox that. This was completely mishandled. The only thing they said was, quote, we are procedural fairness, but the data evidence specifically says that racism causes decreased academic engagement, etc. That makes the debate harder for your students. It's flipped the fairness paradox. It means recourse is only bad, which means it flips procedural fairness as well. Racism matters more than 50 sides because they debaters don't get out of racism. Four is that unfairness is good in certain instances when it allows us to counter assumptions and giving debaters a sense of unfairness. It's spill over. I think this resolve this creates a cognitive dissonance that allows folks to experience what it's like to be oppressed, which ultimately leads to change the point of me. Returning their office. The clash debate was horrible. The 1 hour was extremely going to be one. The assimilation is that term, this was dropped, leading to antagonist association between means we can't clash anymore. That was only simulation instead of above two. Clashes are often the two the framing that they could have read evidence in this debate, the rest, etc. Definitely could have been applied to the case, but they chose not to read it, which is proof that the clash could have happened in this round, but they chose not to do it. Three, violence outweighs violence towards their ability to not change, and was above unfairness. That balance, obviously, we definitely resolve our impacts. Oh, and they don't. All their offense about subjectivity is shifting, etc. But we are the only team that has read actual professors. First, microaffirmation. The only answer to this was that you can just congratulate us. But Solon says that microaffirmation is chosen by the person that's microaggressive independently across the dot evidence over here. The validates of feeling and acting with feeling propagates the negative effects of microaggression. Those that they make students feel welcome and that they're capable of success, which is intrinsic to winning regardless of the causality of the reactions of the models debate. Second is competitive precedent. They agree teams want to win, and it doesn't matter if certain teams will stop. They agree that teams want to win. So if MJ loses this K over and over again, and they never win a round ever again, then stop reading about China reps, which means we do need to still run subjectivity shift. And third, the neuroscience is basically drop political rhetoric, triggers electrochemical response to the brain that unconsciously shapes our minds, even when we perceive an argument in an unemotional fashion. Cartesian rationality is just a theory, so you should prefer actual science verified through fMRI. the one AR says suicide, internalized losses, etc. But the one AR presents this through a high school lens perspective, where the threshold of advocacy believe high schoolers over neurologists describing scientifically validated processes, and the jewel card saying slurs is wrong. One, it didn't happen. Two, even if it did, it doesn't disprove the claims of the article. Three, it's about racialized implicit biases that racist cops have. Now, the link debate is 100%. Now the tab solve debate is definitely negative. The framing issue is that the twins spent at least a minute justifying why litigation is because the Wang are brushed off with blithering answers. The dropped autonomy is key. The dot evidence station. The debater should be directly and be resistant oppression. The only answer was like false positives, moral hazards, etc. But these are included with the dot evidence. And all the vowel solvency stuff can be cross-applied here because it's about specific things that are resisting back. Now the link debate is definitely negative. Sorry for jumping around. The YEC's description of rising China and old crime are create racialized tropes of yellow power that spills over the song card specifically said that the song card specifically says that any quote China terror spills over to violence to Chinese people in real life. Now the alt debate is the vowel solvency debate because Neon Jinrun says that Neon Jinrun is a form of shifting perspectives, etc. Which means if we prove that we have, which we've done, then that is the alternative.
Environmental overture outweighs aviary disintegrated to the microbiotic collapsing. No, I invite you. That's the extend money or one. You cannot jurisdictionally vote on their favor because both sides agree that non-necessary is bad, which means that you reject the non-necessary vote after because the plan is a good idea. These outweigh psychic violence and significant cuts of massive suffering to millions. Two, and fairness outweigh the foundation to the game will be ensured by your ballot in this round. It's strictly good. The game debates an equal evaluation of the arguments presented by both sides, but negative regards to unrealistic evaluation in their favor, triggering the internal link to our impact. They've invested in this value too. They've done line by line for a fair evaluation. Then it said analytics to break you case and break you active, isolated drop arguments, which you should not allow agents to. We'll post round. They can make an unfair decision. Our terms that we get where the price conflicts and against links, which speed out identification that's objective. They to the resolution that here to both sides can act for the fact for the way of the study unfairly skewed for the board. The negative object of study is for items with what it seems prior questions infinitely versus standard. There's no definition of or broad for what justification is single Pikachu certain words you want to see the guard offense and we can't guard our offense. Then you live the debate frame all their offensive start activities, school family friends, switch sides, substance ground. There's all frame which means that we cannot learn from this debate, so there's only risk of double down. The rule of the judge is wrong. This is for the better debate. Adjudicating racism will be impacted. Below stopping the round, voices happen where other forms are better. Under their rule of the judge for determining violence in this round, because debating it out, it's far worse. The assimilation was not a single 1 hour intro doesn't require you to assimilate. You can read the same. But with links to the plan, which is necessary to prove any semblance of advantage. 2, drop they can read it and lose because they don't have to engage and assimilate to our debate norms. They can still read this page in the future. They should not, we should not just not be able to have to lose for it, to lose to it. 3 is drop that A and Han is about one fictional movie character named Christopher Noah, about LeBron and Noah with the debate. Can ignore about psychoanalysis. I encourage you to open up the shrunken parts of the car because Jerry shrunk it on purpose because it's all about a movie character named Christopher. The 4 is that psychoanalysis is fake. Empirical studies confirm that it lacks basis and doesn't have any backing to assume a larger societal mindset. That's for where their insight about not being warrants and studies is a good insight, but it doesn't apply to our card because our study of card does have warrants and studies, but it points back to them because they haven't read any piece of evidence in this debate that establishes why psychoanalysis is correct. Any studies for why that might be true, or even that methods that have beyond just one buzzword is some other bad card. Psychic balance to Asian debaters is not resolvable by a battle, so you should not assume it as an internally to our moral fairness because your battle cannot solve psychic balance in this round, so it cannot solve fairness in broadly. Compartmentalization is wrong. They want particular fairness just as much as we do. They line by line and different drop targets for leverage and preparation they did for this way. Sure, there are different types of fairness, but they want the same fairness for battle control. We have proving their investment, and they said global. We do not want global fairness. They didn't read global fairness constituency, and additionally, get off Jerry's blocks. And the global fairness is wrong because they still want fairness and evaluation. Proven examples. I did above the assimilation term. Terms fairness because like balance was did above. The racism paradox is wrong. 1, it doesn't make sense. The impact is education, which fairness term fairness. Terms education. There's nothing to learn about their literature. The outnose will do every debate. Research only motivates makers when they know, but they'll be able to leverage that research to win the debate. If they know that you have to always play hard questions and we do what I see, then there's no incentive to learn. In the first place, 2, stopping around solves. Unfairness is not good. 2, stopping around solves because if racism did occur, you can prevent the impacts of racism from happening in the second place. And if you don't understand this argument, you should not check out on it because they've not explained it thoroughly enough to warn you about
remedy that unfairness.
The ballot can't remedy that internally to fairness either way. But unfairness is not good. It does not make us challenge our beliefs or understand what it means to oppress. It causes the opposite. It makes us double down. And the direct effect of the ballot is not even cause or prevent our. It can cause and prevent our fairness impact, but it has no barrier or substitutivity for cause which besides saying search to always are good or bad. And we read arguments we don't believe in. Debaters have gone for the capital and work for hedge fund and argued climate policies and became climate activists. Schools, friends, the next 50 years of our lives. That way, a few years to be voting this down makes their office more likely to neutralize as technical failure and to refine our arguments to beat you next time. It's empirically proven. Judges give debaters advice on how to play better, and then debaters beat those teams in the future. Jimmy Leeds lost for credit, but now he's even better at debating microaggressions. That causes more racism against Asian debaters for still developing our options into this round, into the worst one. We didn't fix that crash. It's the only thing. Question the ballot. It's the only thing you're about. So microaffirmation is wrong. Microaffirmation is wrong. Permutation of the app. And congratulate Westminster. That Souls warrants the Souls card because it's not specific about debate, and it says that it makes students feel welcome and to make it enforcing obviously a microaggression to apologize and microaggression, someone who's been microaggressed does not solve because, obviously that's not how a microaggression works. Competitive incentives is wrong. Those, their studies are false. They don't show competitive incentives. People are adversarial debate and lack of changing incentives. Cartesian rationale is false. They say it's a theory. It collapses it. They can't explain their ability to perceive and understand a candle, both before and after it melts, demonstrating mental hegemony. They say the tavern debating it out is bad. One is moral hazards, mixed constraint activity with limits and speech the judges are person. Recent state debate, who committed racism, incentivizes unfalsifiable call outs and micro raw style, the toxic mischaracterization.